Hey guys, what up? Today we're doing a little review on Into the Woods. I already posted a snap review, but the musical is 2.5 hours long, and I thought it needed a little something else. Into the Woods is a musical, like I said, from the one I watched was from 1989, and it had the original cast except for Cinderella. And yeah, spoiler warning, and this video is sponsored by me. Oh yeah, also, the glasses of the mask ID wasn't mine. I stole it from a creator called Saite. He's pretty funny, so yeah. Alright, so a little synopsis. Basically, the baker and his wife are the main characters. So the witch that lives next door placed a curse on their family because the baker's father stole beans from the witch. So in order to have a child, the baker and his wife have to find a cow as white as milk, a cape as red as blood, hair as yellow as corn, and a slipper as pure as gold. The baker and his wife aren't the only characters though. Jack, like from Jack and the Beanstalk, wants milk from his cow, and his mom wants money, basically. Cinderella wants to go to the festival, and Red Riding Hood wants to go to her grandmother's house. Yeah, if you couldn't tell already, Into the Woods is a collection of fairy tales, and like all the characters are doing the same thing at once. And by the end of the first act, like everybody gets what they want, but the story isn't over yet. For a little context, during the first act, Jack killed the giant, like when he went up the beanstalk, and the giant's wife came down to try and get revenge on Jack and like killed people. So everybody had some sort of hand in allowing Jack to go up the beanstalk, which is why everybody started pointing fingers at each other and like blaming and not taking responsibility. So by the end of the story, only the baker, Jack, Little Red Riding Hood, and Cinderella remain, and they learn to take responsibility for their actions throughout the story, and they sort of become like a little family of some sorts. And this musical is kind of like a satire on fairy tales because it doesn't really, like by the end of the first act, doesn't really end in a true happily ever after like they say it does.
To be continued.
But like the first act played like an actual fairy tale, while the second act kind of took their negative character traits that were introduced in the first act and kind of became the whole moral conflict in the second act, which is kind of cool. The story of Into the Woods is kind of complicated, but at the same time it isn't too hard to keep track of because of the music, which we'll talk about in a later section. So yeah, I mean the story is really good. Like it's really laid out for you, but it's really hard to follow, and you can kind of understand where some characters are coming from. And yeah. Y'all, the music in this musical is absolutely insane. Like, it's top tier music. This is best shown when the baker first gives Jack the beans in the bean theme, shown right here. I said, shown right here. Guys, where's the bean theme?
We couldn't find it.
You couldn't find it?
Oh wait, here it is.
There we go. The bean motif is applied in so many contexts throughout the story, which kind of shows like how the witch's beans were the root of the character's problems.
As greens, and nothing but greens. Parsley, peppers, cabbages, and celery, asparagus, and watercress, and potatoes, and lettuce. He said, all right.
You didn't know, at the end of the movie, the bean motif is actually inverted, which exemplifies how the characters have sort of moved on and they like resolved as characters. Motifs are like one of the most genius ways they use music in order to help keep track of the story. Like for example, Cinderella's "I want to go to the festival" little motif, because when she's first in her gown like running from the prince, we don't really know it's Cinderella, and then you hear dun 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 dun, and you're just like, oh, I want to go to the festival. It's really interesting, and it's like really genius. Like I can't describe how massive brain that is. A channel called Sideways has a really good in-depth video about how the music contributes to the story of Into the Woods, and it kind of inspired me to make a video talking about it as a whole product. So yeah, you should go watch that. It's really nice. Editing Aaron here. Forgot to mention that the Princess song Agony sounds a lot like the main theme of Cat's Memory, like the agony and then like memory or whatever. I'll put a clip in it, so just putting that out there.
Each agony that can cut like a knife.
All alone in the moon.
So this show is really funny. Like I don't think I've laughed this much during a musical like ever. Like most shows don't really go for comedy, but I think it works really well in this one because like the directors are really just trying to show these characters as characters compared to like Hamilton, which has to show their characters as real people, which kind of adds to the story and like the themes they're trying to drive. In my opinion, the second act is definitely way funnier than the first act, which is kind of crazy too, because the second act is also more emotionally dense. For example, like during the second act, when they first intersected the giant's wife, they tried to sacrifice the narrator because they didn't like how he was telling the story, and they wanted to please the giant, and it didn't work, and the narrator died.
It's interesting to examine the moral issue involved here. Now, the finality of stories such as these dictates... What? No. Sorry. I tell the story, I'm not part of it.
That's right. Not one of us.
Only from the outside! Well, that's my job, don't you understand? There must always be someone on the outside.
You're going to be on the inside now.
You're making a big mistake.
Nonsense.
There must always be an outside observer to pass the story along.
Some of us don't like the way you've been telling it.
I also think it's pretty neat how the comedy comes from how the characters would naturally react to stuff. Like the comedy isn't like attempted. I mean it is, but like it's kind of just like naturally how they would do stuff, which makes it funny. Like how the witch said to the narrator, "I don't like how you're telling the story." It makes sense because the witch is like that, so you just be like, "Oh yeah," so you just sacrifice the narrator. The lighting and set design in Into the Woods aren't too complicated, but they're really effective. Like for set design, when they first entered the woods, I was actually a little scared, no thanks in small part to the lighting and the score as well. And the lighting is actually really interesting because I think near the end, like when the witch scatters the beans and they all try to pick it up, like it's like a little flick. So yeah, I mean, it's really simple since it's like 1989, so it's not like really flashy or whatever, but it's really effective. So yeah, the costuming and props weren't too complicated either. Like the costuming was just like, you know, what you expect people to wear, like the peasants, like the baker and the wife, they just wear like peasant clothing, and then the royalty, they wore like all these elaborate, you know, all that elaborate stuff. And then the props, I don't think there was too many except for like the beans, I know for sure, and then like the gold bag, that's off the top of my head. But I don't think they really needed props since a lot of the things that like drove the story came from the characters' interactions with each other. So I mean, it was good. It's just they didn't need a whole lot of them, which made sense. Into the Woods is a really strong musical that I don't think gets a lot of attention until, you know, the movie adaptation, which I will watch eventually, but there's one thing that's holding me back. James Corden. I don't know if y'all knew this, but I hate James Corden with a burning passion. I think it was his appearance in Cats that really just struck the wrong nerve. I don't know. James Corden just gets me all riled up, like I'm about to beat somebody up. You know, your fight or flight response, you know what I'm saying? Like, overall, I really liked it and would recommend it to anyone looking for something to watch. It's free on YouTube, so watch it. It's the only drawback for that video is it's in 360p, which isn't even that bad. But otherwise, I'd give it a solid 8.5 out of 10. Very strong musical, would recommend. Anyways, thanks for watching. I appreciate you watching all the way through. And the next video is going to be a little bit more close to home. Dance friends, look out for questions. It's going to be a little in-depth. So, see you next time.